Imagine you're watching a gritty cop drama, drug busts, murder investigations, corrupt politicians, and then a police officer starts singing. We're talking full Broadway musical with choreography, orchestra, the works. That was Cop Rock, a primetime network drama where hardened detectives and criminals alike sang and rapped their feelings. It was ambitious. It had a musical score from one of the top musical minds ever. It even had critical support. And it bombed horribly. But what's so spectacular about this mess, a show which most people have forgotten, heck, you probably forgot until you saw the thumbnail pop up, is that this show had everything behind it. A legendary producer who was at the top of his game, huge financial backing from ABC, and interestingly enough, it laid the foundation for shows millions of Americans now know and love. This is the rise and spectacular crash of Cop Rock, one of the most ambitious experiments in television history. Now before we start, give this video a like if you remember this glorious disaster, and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Okay, let's go back to 1987 and talk about one of the most powerful men in television at the time, Steven Bochco. He created Hill Street Blues, which changed the DNA of the entire cop drama medium, making it prestigious, and really kicked off the turnaround for NBC in the early 1980s before Cheers and The Cosby Show came along. Then came LA Law, which was another massive critical and commercial hit. Bochco wasn't just a television producer, he was a television artiste. ABC obviously agreed and in 1987 signed him to an exclusive long-term deal. And here's the wild part, they gave him a 10-series production commitment. Basically, it was a blank check to create whatever he wanted. ABC was legally obligated to put his shows on the air. His first show on ABC was Hooperman, starring John Ritter. It didn't last long, but was considered the vanguard of a new television genre, critics coining the term dramedy to describe it. The more you know. Then he created Doogie Howser MD about a teenage doctor, which was a modest hit that ran 97 episodes and spawned the career of Neil Patrick Harris. So if we're looking at it like it's baseball, he hit a single, then he hit a triple, but he was about to swing for the fences. He had a concept that had been gestating in his mind for years. Years earlier, a Broadway producer had approached him about adapting Hill Street Blues into a stage musical. Bochco loved the creative challenge, but the logistics were a nightmare. You couldn't take a TV show to Broadway. But what if you pulled the old Uno reverse? What if you brought Broadway to the TV show? A realistic, gritty cop drama, the kind Bochco was famous for, but where the characters expressed themselves through song and dance, not as a joke, but as a genuine way of telling the story. He pitched it to ABC Entertainment president Bob Iger. Iger thought he was out of his mind, and to be fair, everyone did. I mean, come on, musical cops, it sounds like an SNL skit. But remember, ABC had to say yes because of that 10-series deal. If Bochco wants singing cops and robbers, that's what Bochco gets. Cop Rock was happening and no expense would be spared. Bochco brought in William M. Finkelstein as a co-creator and showrunner, and then they got down to business. One of the first orders of that business, they needed songs. So they went after one of the most legendary songwriters alive, Randy Newman. Bochco called him, explained the concept, and asked him to write the theme song and all 5 musical numbers for the plot. Newman's response? "You're crazy, it'll never work." But Bochco would not be denied and talked him into it. And the songwriting team they assembled was genuinely impressive. Mike Post, who'd done the music for Hill Street Blues and LA Law, came on board to produce the music. Donald Markovitz, who just won an Oscar for Dirty Dancing, contributed songs. Amanda McBroom, Greg Edmondson, Brock Walsh, Ron Bosted. This was the real deal, nothing but A players. But here was the wrinkle. The songs couldn't just be musical interludes, they had to advance the plot. Otherwise, you'd have a show that stopped dead every 7 minutes so someone could sing their feelings and then resumed as if nothing happened. So the songwriters attended the story meetings. They were in every single writer's room session. Bochco later described it as a complete circus. A dozen people in the room, all with different creative agendas, trying to make gritty law enforcement feel like a legitimate vehicle for musical theater. And making things more complicated, they needed actors who could sing. And get this, there would be no lip syncing because Bochco had decided the musical numbers would be performed live on set. That meant real orchestras, real voices, and real choreography. They auditioned nearly 200 people and got some real talent. You had Ronnie Cox, the ruthless villain Dick Jones from RoboCop, belting out tunes as the chief of police. You had Paul McCrane, who would later play Dr. Romano on ER. And then there was James McDaniel playing Officer Franklin Rose. He would go on to star in a massive Bochco juggernaut after this disaster. I'll get into that shortly. And in the role of Mayor Louise Plank, a corrupt, bribe-accepting political villain who would sing about her own misdeeds, Bochco cast Barbara Bosson, who was also his wife. Anyway, production was insane and expensive. Each episode cost between $1.8 and $2 million, at a time when a standard network sitcom cost $500,000. The musical numbers required full orchestras on set, weeks of choreography rehearsals, and painstaking coordination between the dramatic storylines and the song sequences. Scenes had to be staged so that a character's emotional arc built naturally to the point where, apparently, the only logical release was to break into song. Unlike a lot of videos I've done, the cast actually liked it. They said afterward it was genuinely one of the most fun shoots they'd ever done. And that was all great. But would anyone watch? Well, they were about to find out. Cop Rock premiered September 26, 1990. The pilot dropped viewers into the streets of LA. A police officer arrests a suspect, and the arrest turns into a full rap number. A courtroom jury delivers its verdict in gospel. A drug-addicted mother sings a heartbreaking lullaby to her baby before selling it to pay for her next fix. The mayor of Los Angeles accepts a bribe and narrates the transaction in original song. It was unlike anything that had ever aired on American network television. The premiere drew 14.3 million viewers, not a monster debut, but respectable for something so risky. Early reviews were mixed, but there was a genuine critical curiosity. Some reviewers called it bold, inventive, and audacious. David Letterman, of course, mocked it relentlessly, 4 times during its premiere week alone. But Bochco, like the honey badger, did not care. He could handle the mockery. Like they say in the PR world, any attention is good attention. And I say that because shortly after the premiere, people stopped paying attention. Episode 2, 9.5 million viewers. Episode 3, 8.8 million viewers. But what was scarier than the drop-off was the reason behind it. Viewers were tuning in, watching a few minutes of musical cops, and then changing the channel. Focus groups were brutal, with participants reporting that the second the singing started, they were out. The suspension of disbelief required to accept a gritty crime drama suddenly pivoting to Broadway choreography was just too much. By the middle of the season, Cop Rock was ranked 80th in the country, the bottom 20% of shows, and dead last in its time slot. It was so bad that ABC was offering sponsors free advertising to compensate for the ratings disaster. And with that, it was time for Bob Iger to have a chat with Bochco and tell him to drop the musical numbers and turn it into a straight, gritty drama, which would have saved the show. That's what Bochco was known for. And Bochco said no. He believed in the vision. To him, the whole point was the blend of dramatic realism and musical expression. The internal pressure was immense. The network was losing money, sponsors were running, and Bochco, like that meme with the dog sitting in the burning house, just kind of said, "This is fine." Well, it wasn't, and all the critical praise evaporated. Ratings continued to crumble, and on November 13, 1990, ABC announced the cancellation after just 11 episodes. Now, the finale had one of the most self-aware moments in television history. In the closing minutes, 2 characters step out of character and start talking directly to the audience about how the show has been canceled and playfully complain that they barely got to sing during the short run. That ending was on point for a show that broke all the rules. And despite America failing to embrace the show, Cop Rock received 5 Emmy nominations and won 2, Outstanding Editing for a Series and Outstanding Achievement in Music and Lyrics, which went to Randy Newman. The ratings sucked, but the production itself was impressive. And Bochco, who could have just run and hid in his mansion after such a flop, didn't. Just 3 years later, in 1993, he delivered NYPD Blue, a raw police drama that kept the gritty realism of Hill Street Blues, but pushed network television even further with adult language, partial nudity, and unflinching moral complexity. Critics called it Cop Rock without the singing, which is kind of what Bob Iger wanted during that intervention. NYPD Blue became a monster hit, ran for 12 seasons, won 20 Emmys, and is still regarded as one of the greatest cop shows ever made. Without cop rock and the lessons learned, do we get NYPD Blue? I don't know. And Bochco never hid from the cop rock failure. Quite the opposite. He called it one of the highlights of his career. He said, if you have a guaranteed development deal of that scale, the kind of creative protection almost no producer ever gets, and you use it to make safe, conventional television, then shame on you. He swung, he missed, and he would do it again. And you've got to admire that. It's like that quote from Steve Jobs, the ones crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Cop Rock was the first major network drama to attempt integrating original music numbers into ongoing serialized storytelling. And that concept didn't die. In 2009, Glee, a network drama literally about a high school choir, became a massive mainstream hit. But here's the difference. The whole show was about singing, so the musical numbers made more sense, unlike singing a verdict in a courtroom. But that opened the door to Empire and other shows that were actually a bit closer to what Bochco tried. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Gallivant, and Smash, dramas that made original music the dramatic engine, not just an interruption. They don't cite cop rock as their inspiration, but someone had to be first, someone had to break the mold and show what was possible, and yeah. And for that, Steven Bochco, we salute you. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give the video a like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.